Well, despite all the talk this week about same-sex marriage, both President Obama and Governor Mitt Romney are trying to shift the conversation back to the economy. President Obama traveling to Nevada yesterday, a state hit hard by the housing crisis. Governor Romney campaigning in North Carolina, which is a right-to-work state. This as brand new polling shows a majority of Americans disapprove of the way the president is handling the economy. Joining us now is Gretchen Hamel. She is executive director of Public Notice, a nonprofit group advocating for smaller government. And Chris Kofinis is here, former chief of staff for West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, a Democrat. Nice to see you both. Thanks very much for being here. Gretchen, let me start with you because the president provided Congress with a to-do list. And this is what's on it. He wants Congress to help homeowners, small business owners, returning veterans who are back looking for work, businesses that promise not to ship their jobs overseas. He says that these are common sense ways that we can help the economy and help people looking for work. How do you think it sounds?
Well, it's a to-do list too late. I mean, everyone knows that Congress wasn't going to be able to do anything this year in an election year. And we should all just be wondering where this to-do list was years before. We haven't seen it at all. And it's something that the president has been doing lately, is he's been calling on Congress to take action, knowing full well they won't take action, so he has someone to blame.
Chris, Governor Romney says that getting rid of Obama and getting started on the Keystone Pipeline are two ways that we could absolutely start getting Americans back to work. How does that sound to you?
Well, I mean, it sounds, I think, he's playing to his base. You know, the economy is going to be much more complex than just a question of getting rid of Obamacare. The Keystone Pipeline, actually, I think, has some promise. And but in terms of what I think, Governor Romney's fundamental problem is, too much of his policies and too much of his proposals are a flashback to the past. And I think part of the problem that he's having in terms of connecting with voters, he sounds basically like every other Republican. And to be frank about it, these are policies that have failed in the past. So simply repeating them, simply proposing them again is not going to attract, independents or make people think you're a different candidate. And I think that's kind of the box that Romney finds himself in.
Gretchen, this is the message, what Chris is saying, is what we're also hearing from the president. We can't go back to the policies of the Bush years that helped begin the process that got us to where we are right now. So what does Governor Romney say? How does he differentiate himself from Bush-era policies and talk about ways to get Americans back to work in 2012?
Well, I think he is talking a lot about those policies today, but I think everyone can agree that where we are right now and what we've seen over the course of the past 3 years is something that we don't want for another few more years. We've had a 47% increase in debt. I mean, that alone is something that is disturbing. My generation will not be able to see Social Security or Medicare. You have to look at the labor force, too. Labor force participation is down to a 30-year low. Now, there's a problem. We need more people working, and the policies that we currently have going on aren't working either.
Chris, we heard from Gretchen about the labor force and the unemployment numbers. While the overall numbers have sort of been moving slowly in the right direction, a lot attribute that simply to the fact that a lot of people are just simply not looking for work anymore. What does the president do about that as he heads towards trying to convince everybody to give him another 4 years?
Well, I mean, this is the big problem, I think, that the administration has. I mean, the unemployment rate has gone down. You can debate in terms of why, but clearly we've been creating jobs, clearly not enough. I mean, voters are going to sit there and judge the president based on his record and what his vision is in terms of going forward. But I think the other part, too, and this is kind of the intangible part about elections, is the emotional part. Do you feel someone's pain? Can you relate to them in terms of the middle class, understanding their problems? And I think that's where President Obama in particular has a real advantage over Governor Romney, who doesn't seem, and his campaign does not seem to really kind of grasp how important that emotional part is. Listen, the record is going to be critical, and the administration has got a hurdle there. But it's not going to be just enough to say, the president didn't do enough. Everybody knows he was dealt a really difficult hand.
Gretchen, that is the knock on Governor Romney, that folks who are out of work might not feel as though the governor sort of understands the problems that they face while he is, busy building extensions onto his home and buying new cars and the like. How much does that hurt him when he's sort of trying to get a message out there to everyday Americans?
Well, I think personally, the governor is doing a little bit better than some Americans. But you have to look back at his past history and what he's done for other businesses, what he has done for the Olympics, taking the Olympics out of the red and being into the debt and making it an earner. So you look at those things that he's done in the past with the businesses and his career and his experience, and he can point to that. He should, point to that and use that to his advantage.
Chris, your old boss says that he's not sure, Senator Manchin, that he's going to vote for President Obama, and this is a Democrat. I'm just wondering how this president can maybe seal the deal with some of the independents, some of the moderates who were behind him in 2000, but who, like Senator Manchin and others, are just not so sure this time around.
Well, listen, every election is a choice. Now, the incumbent, whether it's Republican or Democrat, has a little bit of a tougher hurdle because they have a record they have to defend. But I think when you look at the choice and the vision between a President Obama and where he wants to take the country and a President Romney, I think the fundamental distinction here is, who is going to stand up and protect the middle class? Who's going to do the kind of policies and not basically go back to the type of policies that helped create the very type of mess the president had to come in and help address. So I think, listen, this is going to be a tough election. I consider, unlike some of my maybe colleagues, I consider, Governor Romney a pretty formidable candidate, but he's got some major flaws and some major disconnect with voters that aren't going to be just simply, washed away by pointing at President Obama and saying he didn't do enough.
Well, Americans are just now starting to focus on this race, and so we'll be watching very closely over the next couple of months. Gretchen and Chris, thank you both. Nice to talk with you.
Thank you.
When we come back,